once again to you, lovely viewer. Thank you for joining in today. Today I want to share something special I learned to do with my pumpkin. Now, you remember from my cat and quine video and then my pumpkin pie, I was using the pumpkin puree. So you realize in the granite soup video, I used fresh pumpkin. The one remained, I just packaged it and placed it in the freezer. Now, this is what I did with it to just take space off my freezer and save me cooking time. If you've not yet watched those videos, please do well to look at them after this video. And of course, support us by subscribing, liking, and sharing. So, pumpkin, like I talked about in my granite soup using in cat and quine, I spelled out some of the nutritious benefits of it. And it's even good for those who are a bit diabetic and then those who are trying to lose weight. So you realize from that video, I had a very huge pumpkin. I used about 1/4 of it. So what remained, I just, cut it into smaller chunks. Then I placed it in my Ziploc bags and I placed it in the freezer. But later I realized it was just occupying too much space in my freezer. And then I knew I wasn't going to use it there and then. So I didn't want to keep it in the fridge. So what came to mind is, why don't I just puree this, which will save me cooking time whenever I want to use my pumpkin. Because for your pumpkin puree, if you're going to do your soups, your stews, your porridges, your pancakes, your shakes and juices, the smoothies, it's easier for you to incorporate the pumpkin puree in there, which sweetens and thickens it up and also adds in more like nutrients. So it fortifies it up for you. So what I did in this video is to puree it. And what I did was to first take the frozen pumpkin. You could use fresh pumpkin, but you realize what I had was frozen pumpkin. So I worked with frozen pumpkin. And what I realized with the frozen pumpkin is that when it thaws, it gets softer. So when you're baking, it doesn't really take too much time for it to fully cook and get very soft for you to blend. So I began by greasing my pan, which I was going to arrange the pumpkins in. And in this video, I used the same, which is a cauldron to bake, as well as using my regular cooking pan to also try and then get it to soften. So just in case you're not using a conventional oven or you don't have a conventional oven at your disposal, you could just bake it in your saucepan, you could just bake it in your same or your rice cooker or even in your pans. And if you want to learn how to bake with the rice cooker, it's in my red velvet video. You can have a look at it. So what I did was to arrange the pumpkins in the pan very well. I heavily loaded it. So yes, I arranged that in the pan, and then they went into my same. The same was preheated before it went in. You could just use a conventional oven just like that, preheat at 270 for like 5 minutes before it goes in. Then I just placed them in there and covered. But the same one thing is that I don't have it in direct. There's a rack in which would help raise the thing I'm going to bake, and then that also helps the space around it to maintain the heat and then cook it up for you. So once that's done, I just cover it up and then I moved to the pan. So the main idea was to see whether I could get the same results and whether it would work. And I realized that if you don't have an oven at your disposal, that doesn't mean you can't do a pumpkin puree. You can still use your pans to do it. And what I realized is when you freeze it, the water kind of easily comes out from the pumpkin. Pumpkin is made up of more than 70% water. So when you put it in the freezer and it thaws, you can easily squeeze out the juice in there. And the juice in there, honestly, is sweet and nice. But at the end of the day, we don't want to separate the juice from the fiber because we have to make use of the fiber. So I baked it for close to 40 minutes in my saying. So virtually 40 minutes in there before it got very soft for me to puree and blend. But the one I did on the gas stove in my saucepan, it took me less than that. So within 15 minutes, I was done. And what I realized is if you're going to use fresh, because there's not going to be so much water in there, or the water may not, the fruits won't have softened that much. I think if you're using the fresh, you may need to increase your time Yes, you may spend more time than I used in this video. So once it's soft enough, you can easily mash this up. And you could use your blender, your food processor. You can even do it in your potato. You can do it with your fork or your potato masher. You could do it with a lot of stuff. So I transferred mine into my blender. I use my wooden spoon to just squash it a little bit and get it a little mashed. Then I blended it up. I realized when I was blending without water, it was hard for me to blend. So what I did was I added just a little bit of water to make it easy for it to blend. And I still got a perfect puree. So for the puree, depending on how thick or how smooth you'd want it, that would depend on the quantity of water you're introducing. But the main idea is that the water shouldn't really be so significant or so much in there. And when you're done, you're going to get a fine puree, which you can add into your soups, your stews, your porridges, your smoothies, your juices, your fruit shakes. You can even add it to your pancakes, your baby meals is essential in there. And once you introduce all these things, you are fortifying and introducing more nutrients into your eating, onto your diet, which is so good for your health. So I hope you give this pumpkin puree recipe a try and store your pumpkin perfectly in this state in your fridge for like 3 weeks to 3 weeks maximum, and then maybe in your freezer for like 6 months to a year. And whenever you're doing your stews, your soups, you can just introduce them in there together with your pancakes and your fruit juices, shakes, and smoothies. Till I see you in the next food video, do live life to the fullest. Be joyous, be merry. Lots of love for my team and I. Mwah.